typical of what they do at the upper levels to decorate them and give them a little bit of colour and light. Very nice inside to look at that colour coming through glass. There's a whole thing about coloured glass, and that is that the light coming through coloured glass, you're actually looking at coloured light. Whereas if you're looking at paint, you're looking at reflected light colour. It's a different experience, and your eye and your brain is much more stimulated by coloured light than by reflected colour. So that's one of the reasons why, and apart from being very expensive, which is why they use them in religious depictions and in religious buildings, because it's very hard to do, lots of craftsmanship, lots of money involved, but it's also has a very strong impact on the viewer. That a picture you look at that is coloured glass light coming through to your eyes is also got movement in it because the light changes all the time, and so that's has much more impression on you than a painted picture on a wall or on a canvas. You might also almost call that spiritual aesthetic, that it's affecting your spirit, your emotions, right through your eyeballs without you understanding anything about it. It's just physical, human stuff. Okay, I think we're going to stay here until it's got training. Building to stop it falling apart while they let it fall apart, if you know what I mean. Yeah, they started demolishing the structure inside, which meant that wall wasn't stable anymore. So the structural engineer said, okay, well, you've got to tie it back. So that's a plate, 100 by 100, 4 inches by 4 inches steel plate with a rod that goes right through to the other side with another plate on the other side. It's a structural reinforcement.
On a lot of older buildings, you can actually see them like in an S-shape.
Yeah, that's earthquake. Yes, that old S-bend is an earthquake measure. These are recent minimal structural engineering. Have a look, Hillary, see that alleyway with a gate in it? See above it? All those beams across there holding up the upper story over your glass fronts are steel like that, boxed in with timber or plaster or whatever. Except that one, because it all fell off. And go and negotiate.
Yeah. Whatever they are.
Tell them to come down here. Okay. I haven't given this to you as a new build because it's not finished yet. It's a bit hard to see what's going on. The original billboard used to show, I showed you a slide of what they were intending to do. They told us they were going to keep the first floor of this old building, which was only a single story, and they were going to set the whole thing back. What they've actually set back is half of it, and it's the main wall. But their partition walls and their balconies come right to the street face. So that's really, again, facadism. All they've really kept is the ground floor level, front face. And then, of course, they've only kept the masonry of it. They've taken out the shop fronts, the windows, the doors and everything else. Yeah. So what have they actually kept? A band of white painted tiles on masonry as a motif. And that never fitted in a street in the first place. It's a 1940s or 50s addition to the street, which was out of character and didn't contribute very much. The only thing it had was a Fremantle Workers' Social and Leisure Club. So it is a club. It's a place where the workers go for their drinks, for special union meetings, and it had a life of its own as a use. So it was the use that was actually significant in the street, not the building. And what we're going to have now is what looks like cheap accommodation, although I bet you it's not. I bet it's going to be very expensive because of how much structure they've had to put in. And look at it. Are they the downpipes, or is that sewer, or what, coming down all through the building? Drainage, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but a roof drainage doesn't have to have those kinks and bumps in it. So I think they've got some plumbing up there as well. Anyway, it's very ugly at the moment, but the design says they're going to cover that with perforated screens. So what you're going to see is a mesh on top of a white watt with glass, and they reckon they're going to put a bar or some kind of public space in the ground floor as a tribute to the original use and to the workers' club. They're going to leave the lettering, hoop-de-doo. So that, in my terms, this is a failure of nerve by council, and they've been pulled a swifty over. They don't really understand what the character of the place was, what was worth keeping. They've kept the wrong things. They've kept a little bit of paint and mortar when what they should have been doing is keeping that public interface with the street, a usable something in the main area, and set back all that third story. Look, it's a half a story taller than all the other buildings in the street, almost. By squeezing in low height ceilings, they have 3 stories in a 2-story street. So it's not even very nice accommodation. It's got very low ceilings and everything in it. But I didn't give you that as a job because it's too hard to make sense of what's going on when it's constructed like that. I've given you that little cottage problem around the corner. Building. So entrance hall, fancy ceilings go with that, and then access to the main staircase, which is the staircase. Lovely pressed metal on the soffit, and pressed metal. Is that pressed metal or plaster, Alana? On the dado?
They're plaster.
Plaster.
This is pressed metal up here.
That's pressed metal, yeah. Okay. And I think we have an original marble tile floor here too. So very, very rich, very posh. Big company. Dalgetty's were importers, exporters in Western Australia, and I think one of the lovely things is that now have with the new build and the old build all being used still by a shipping company, so still related to the port uses. And you'll actually find on the wall paintings of the towns that the Mediterranean Shipping Company originates from, and they are ports obviously, but that's celebrating their connections with their historic roots in a building that had this kind of a use originally, and that's a nice continuity of uses in their historic building, as well as keeping a lot of the heritage fabric. Okay, modern facilities, lifts inserted. Back alley here. Okay, yeah. And probably the beam boxing is plaster, the cornice is plaster, but the top cornice and the sheeting is the stamped metal. And the roses, they might be zinc, and they are got holes in them because originally the lights are gas lights. Gas lights produce a lot of heat, but it goes up. So you have a hot ventilation system above the hot gas light to take the hot air away. And that's the origin of the centre flowers with holes in them, is as ventilators, mostly for gas lighting, but also for public spaces that gets the hot air that we breathe out up and away out through tubes and so on to either the roof or to the walls, out the walls. Original floor tiles still. This is a new section. That's and here is that corner door. So this is the truncation in the street. The main entry is actually off the stair hall, but this is the public office where people come to do business with Dalgetty's originally. So they had a big counter here, not for a long time, but originally as a front office, and people who are general business coming in through that door. And the doors themselves, look at the shape of the doors. Because the corner is like that, the doors are curved as well. Imagine the joinery involved in that. Beautiful stuff. And then look at these main windows with their window casings, all in Jarrah, polished Jarrah. And then those fat columns we saw as we came through the archway, there they are over there in the manager's office. In, I think that's red granite concrete. It is good. It is red granite, yeah. Aberdeen, got one. Yeah, beautiful details. And a lot of the shipping offices, maybe not all as grand as this, but the main grand offices in those shipping offices in Fremantle, always special decoration and detail. But very nice to see. It's still being used as a shipping office.
We're trying to find restored ones, so we can add a fireplace back in.
Yep.
For here. This is just one of our meeting rooms.
So this was 2 rooms, was it?
Yes,
Yeah.
and then we've made it into one.
Yep.
Boardroom.
Keep moving in so that other people can come in behind you. Yes, a nice thing that they've done here with the stopping short the carpet from the edge of the walls. That means the original timber boards can still breathe and not get suffocated, and because all the floors underneath here, this is water table in Fremantle is very close to ground level, especially at high tide. So they get always damp underneath there. You can't stop that. And if the boards stay damp on the underside, but they can't evaporate water through the top, then they end up swelling on the underside. And you see it in old houses. You go along and the boards are all cupped. They're all dished because they expanded on the underside and can't breathe out, so they change shape. But these ones will be good. They've got little gaps where air can come through. They're probably tongue and groove boards, so they're fitted together. But if you put carpet right up to the walls, then that kind of breathing can't happen and the boards get damaged in the process. And there's underfloor air conditioning probably. Yeah. Okay. Where's our guide? Follow our guides up. And what that very nice thing they've done is look at that painting. It's nearly all sky, and it's sky lit. And that's one of the principal origin ports for the Mediterranean Shipping Company. And it's a print of a very old painting. So lights on the corners, hanging off the bosses off the ceiling. That's a fairly simple way of doing the lighting. Air conditioning in that part of the ceiling. So beautiful space. Next.
We'll just walk through the hallway to the
Good
next.
safety for new stair.
So that was the top floor, and we built into the roof space, which is where we're going now.
See the magic effect of colour coming through glass as opposed to reflected. And there's a panorama of Fremantle that you've seen bits of. I usually show you a picture of the middle one, but it was actually a continuous panorama, and they've got all 3 panels. And my favourite space is in all of Fremantle. He's here.
This is fabulous.
Look down there. Have a look at the Fremantle roofs and Fillmore Place as a windy street. But then when you have a look, get out so other people can come in. Because the street
어디를 가냐 무서워.
Yes. Yay. Oh, it's hiding air conditioners and pipes and box gutters and and that one's actually got a light well in the middle. Look at that.